the theory that I'm choosing to talk about in this part of my webfolio is the use of motivation theory, and I'm going to talk about it in particular with reference to helping students to address academic writing skills. And what I've found repeatedly is that students don't seem to value the outcomes, and the reason that I say this is, and I'll choose an example here, is the use of the possessive apostrophe, which is the bane of any marker's life if you're working at a level where it's an expectation that grammar will be correct. And of course, students seem to pepper apostrophes around in their work routinely without any regard to the rule. And the rule, after all, is really relatively simple. And I know that for my learners, I've explained it any number of times through my feedback. And I've explained it not just to say this is wrong, but explain to them the correct way to do it. And also tried to some extent to give them some reasons why it might be useful to use the possessive apostrophe correctly in terms of the meaning that's conveyed. So if we say the learner's books, where we place the apostrophe tells us whether it's one learner or more than one learner. So it helps in clarifying exactly what you mean. But that, as yet, hasn't seemed to be enough, and it seems to me that they require more motivation in order to learn it well. It's often phrased as a kind of problem of support, or the learner needs more support, they need to be referred to the academic skills tutor, or they need access to online advice about how to do this correctly. But it seems to me that all that is already in place, and the real problem is that learners aren't, for some reason, engaging with that advice and internalising it and using it in their writing. And I'm thinking here of the work of Carol Dweck when she talks about value and expectancy as a way to motivate learners. And what she says is that motivation is kind of a consequence of two main factors. The first being, do the learners value the outcome? Do they think it's worthwhile? And secondly, do they expect to be able to do it? And if those two things are in place, they value the outcome and they expect to succeed in achieving it, then those two things times together equals a large motivational factor. So I've been looking for ways in which I can get learners to value these outcomes more. And what I've done is to create a PowerPoint presentation that just deals with the importance of correct grammar, and I'm using the work of Bourdieu there and his thoughts on cultural capital. And what I'm going to argue with the students is that these uses of correct grammatical forms in written language have cultural capital. So if you're able to display to people that you're able to write well and correctly, following the correct grammatical rules, if your reader is a person who's able to distinguish between correct and incorrect use, then you score points with them, and that might be somebody for whom you're applying for a job or so on. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm also going to use the example of Sir Roger Casement, who was hanged on a comma. There's a comma in a legal sentence, and this comma led to a dispute about the meaning of the sentence, and it was taken to mean a particular thing, and therefore Roger Casement was convicted of treason and hung. So, not that I'm threatening them with hanging, that would be a more behaviourist approach, sort of negative aversion therapy, but we're not going to go as far as that. But just really to reinforce that point of valuing grammar, not just because of the social outcomes of being able to write well, but also because it helps to clarify and convey meaning, so it is of value in and of itself.